Liza Lawrence here with episode 26, The Man of My Dreams. Welcome to Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm your host, Liza Lawrence, a wife, mother, teacher, and miracle lover. If you're new to this podcast, this is what we do here. Each week on Miracle Monday, we celebrate awe-inspiring true stories from regular people like you and me. People who have experienced something surprising and wonderful that could be considered the work of a divine source. My desire is to help us recognize God's hand and His love in our lives, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen. Thanks for listening to the show. Now let's celebrate wonders and miracles together. Psalms 32, verse 8, I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Today, I thought it would be fun, because this is the week of Valentine's Day, to tell mine and my husband's love story. And it's not just a love story. I believe it's a God story. So we're going to share with you kind of our miraculous mating and some beautiful things that happened that we both have felt were divinely guided. But first, I want to give a shout out to the fan of the week. This is from M. Nelson. She says, I just finished listening to episode 5, Cardiac Ridge, and it was an answer to a prayer that I didn't know I needed. Liza is one of my former college professors, and her life experiences impacted my life and helped me to have more faith in Jesus Christ. I'm grateful for this podcast that I have been binge listening to ever since I heard about it. I am so grateful that the Lord has used me to be a positive influence in your life. Thanks so much for that review. If you haven't given the podcast a review yet, jump onto iTunes and write a review. Give us a 5-star rating. I so appreciate it, and I would love to read your review on an episode. Alrighty, well, it is time to get started with our story. So first I want to introduce my husband, Sheldon. He's always such a great supporter of my projects. So thanks for being a good sport, Sheldon, and being willing to share our story and to do this fun Valentine's episode.
Of course, I had no choice.
That's true. Okay. Well, first, I just wanted to share a little bit about before we met. So probably a year before we met, I had a dream, and this dream was of my wedding day. So in high school, I had dated a boy for about 3 years, 2 years in high school and then 1 year in college, and our families loved each other. The plan was that we were probably going to get married, and he had gone on a mission for 2 years. So he went on a mission trip, and he was out of the country, and I had continued to go to college, and my plan was to finish my degree in 3 years. And I was an elementary education major, and I was on the fast track to graduation. Well, a few months after he left, I had had a dream of my wedding. And in this dream, my boyfriend's mom was crying, and she was so sad, and the whole feel was a little bit melancholy for his family and him. And it made me curious, well, who am I marrying then? And I turned and I saw someone I did not know at the time, but he was tall and he had dark hair. And my boyfriend at the time, he had blonde hair, and I'm 5'2" and he was probably 5'11", but he wasn't super tall, but everyone's tall to me. But this guy in my dream was considerably taller than me. And I thought, I don't know him, but that's who I was marrying. I woke up, and it was such an emotionally charged dream that I told my sister about it. And I said, I have to tell you about this dream that I had. And I told her the dream because it was so impactful to me. Now, fast forward a year later, I have forgotten this dream. It didn't linger that long, maybe a week. And I'm thick into my education program. and I was burning out. I had gone a summer, a full year, a summer, and a full year, and I was coming up onto my third summer to go to school, and I was really burning out. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need a break. I've got to get out of town, take a break. And I was dating someone that I wasn't really happy about, and I needed a way to kind of give us some space and just kind of clear our heads. But I didn't know what I wanted to do or what kind of break I needed. I just knew I needed a break. So I went to go talk to my advisor just to see what my options were, how it would affect my plan to graduate early. I needed all those details. So I went to her office one afternoon. She was normally in her office. I worked closely with her in a lot of my classes. And I went to her office, but her office door was closed. And I knocked on the door and she didn't answer, so no one was there. And I noticed a piece of paper taped on her door. And it was an advertisement for a job in West Yellowstone, Montana. And I was going to school in Utah, at Utah State University. So it's about 4 hours away. And I just was kind of intrigued by it. I left. The next day, I needed to still talk to my advisor to figure out if I could take the summer off. And she was there this time. And I walked in and we talked about my schedule. And when I walked into her office, I actually looked on her door for that same piece of paper, and it wasn't there anymore. And I said to her after we met, I said, yesterday you had a note on your door advertising a job up in West Yellowstone. And she goes, oh, let me look for it. And she rummaged through some piles of papers and couldn't find it. Another pile, couldn't find it. Finally, she said, was this it? And she handed it to me. And I said, yeah, that was it. And it was advertising a job to work at a day camp for children, which it would have given me good job experience. And she looks at the date and she goes, oh, well, the deadline's already expired. And I said, well, can I take it anyway and just see? She goes, sure, you can have it. So she handed me the paper. That night, I went home and I called the number on it. And I talked to the lady and I said, I know that this job deadline for application has expired, but is there any chance I could apply for this job? And she said, oh yeah, actually, we'd love more applications. We're just going through them right now and we'd love to have more. She said, why don't you send me off your resume as quick as you can and we'll see if we can set up a phone interview. And I thought, oh, wow. Okay, that was fast. I got everything put together. She set up a phone interview. And the whole time, I remember the day before the phone interview, I was really praying about this job. I had never actually lived away from home. I was 19 years old. I had been going to college, but I was living at home at the time. And so it would be my first experience away from home, my first experience not going to school. And I was really trying to be prayerful about it. And I even fasted that night. And in my fasting and prayer, I said, if you need me up there for some reason, then help me get the job. And I'll take it as a sign that this was destiny, that I need to be up there. But if you don't, I'm okay with that too. But I do want to do your will. I want to do what's right for my path. So we do the phone interview. It goes well. The very next day, she calls and hires me. She gives me some numbers for people to find housing and everything's all set. And what was interesting, everything happened so quickly and it was not what I was planning, but it just all fell right into place. The job started in June. I packed up my things and I actually went up with a girl that I knew and we were roommates together. So we both piled in our cars and drove up to West Yellowstone early June. And as we were driving up, I remember noticing that there was still snow on the ground outside. And I thought, oh my goodness, where have we come? It is still winter in June. I can't believe this. So I moved up to West Yellowstone in June in 1997. So Sheldon, tell us what was happening in your world to lead you up there as well.
So I'm just going to establish the timeline here. About when were you having this conversation with your advisor?
It probably would have been April, May time.
Okay, that's even better. So I actually grew up in West Yellowstone, and after graduating from high school, I left the country to serve a mission for my church. And while I was out of the country, my parents moved back to Heber City, Utah, and that's where I grew up in my childhood, and that's where I came home to when I returned back to the country. I got home off my mission in February, And it felt a little weird. I was familiar with Heber, and in some ways it felt like home. It was my childhood home. But I took a job there and was working for a little while, but I just didn't feel settled. I didn't feel like that's where I was going to spend the summer. And so one time, and honestly, it was about April, it would have been about when you were having this conversation with your advisor. I announced to my mom one day, I said, I am going back up to West Yellowstone. I want to work up there for the summer. And she was kind of surprised because I had a good job and there was no real reason for me to go up there. And she said, well, that's great. That sounds like a plan, but why? And I said, I just feel like there is someone I need to meet up there. And I know that sounds kind of like, yeah, right. But that was the conversation that we had. I just had this feeling that I needed to be up there, that where I was then was sort of a dead end. So the time came and I went up to West Yellowstone. I got a job up there. I was actually working at the Yellowstone Airport. So I packed up my truck. I headed up to Montana. When I got up there, at the local church group, they put me in charge of all of the young adult activities. In West Yellowstone, it's a tourist town. There are a lot of college-age kids who come from all over to work in the seasonal jobs. And so there's quite a large young adult program. And they put me in charge of this thing, which I wasn't really looking forward to, but I was going to organize all the activities and run the meetings. And so it was one of the first Sundays when I was in charge of this program, and two girls came bouncing up to me.
Wait, let me cut in first. Before we meet, actually, formally. So we had come to church, and my roommate that Sunday, she goes, let's go to church and look for cute boys. And I had a guy I was dating, just wanted to get out of that relationship. And then I had this other high school boyfriend that was still on a mission, and I really wasn't looking for boys. I was trying to get away from boys, but I, wanted to support her. So I said, okay, that's great. I'll help you look for cute boys. So we were sitting in church, and I saw this really cute boy, and he was tall.
Across a crowded room.
Right. He was tall. He had dark hair. And mind you, I still had forgotten about my dream, so that was not playing into this. But I looked at him and I said, ooh, he's cute. And my roommate said, no, his hair's too bushy. He needs a haircut.
I was going rugged.
Yeah,
I was wild. In Montana. I was going wild.
So the next week, we go to church, and we're scouting out again the cute boys. And she points to this boy who's tall and has dark hair. And she goes, oh, he's cute. And I looked at him and I said, that's the same boy I said last week.
I might have gotten a haircut. Is that what it was?
Yeah. And she goes, no. And then she looked and she goes, oh, I think he got a haircut. So then she says to me, oh, let's go talk to him. Let's go after the meeting and see if he needs help. Like, he's the leader, so let's see if he needs a secretary or something. So we went on a mission to go talk to this cute boy. So we went up to him and we said, hey, do you need help with anything? Do you need a secretary?
I said, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. And so you were like, sure. Well, I knew my friend was vying to meet him. So I said, okay, well, you can go. And I sat out in the hall and waited while they had this meeting, because he was meeting with his committee to plan all the activities. So this was funny because my roommate comes out of this meeting, and this always embarrasses you, I know, Sheldon. But she goes, oh my gosh, he is so funny. All the girls just love him. They're like, oh, Sheldon, oh, and they giggle, and he is so funny, Liza. Oh my gosh. And I was like, well, great. That's awesome. So then it was...
I was at the top of my game.
You were like the Bachelor with all these girls.
Yeah,
right?
It was like the Bachelor, except for there were probably more like 20 eligible young ladies.
I know.
Just kidding. It so happened that a lot of the seasonal workers that come up to West Yellowstone are girls. And so the proportions were working in my favor.
Right. You had a lot of girls to choose from. Okay. So later that week, you called us.
So both of these girls were cute, but I was particularly attracted to Liza. And I wanted to ask her out, but she and her friend were inseparable. They were kind of a package deal. I called to invite both of them to go on a hike. And as luck would have it, the friend had gone back home for the weekend, and it was just Liza. And she said, well, it's just me. And I said, oh, well, okay, let's just you and me go.
So maybe there was some divine intervention there as well behind the scenes that we probably didn't recognize, right?
Yeah. And so we go on this date. I thought we'll go on a hike, and then we will come back and barbecue some burgers at this house that I was staying at my friend's house. A beautiful log home overlooking the valley.
We went on this beautiful hike, and it was kind of fun because Sheldon was local. So he knew all the places to take me and show me around, show me the landscape. And something that I love about Sheldon is he's very, very in tune with nature, and he loves the forest and hiking and water. And anyway, I just was really impressed with that. So we go on this hike, and our conversation was so natural. And I had this feeling, almost a knowing of, there you are. I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting to find you. And here you are. And I felt it on our very first date, which I know is unusual. You sometimes hear these love stories of, I just knew they were the one. I truly felt that way. I felt completely at home with him, like I was meeting my best friend again. It was really interesting.
So you got to keep in mind also, because of that premonition I had, I'm keeping my eye out for this girl that I'm supposed to meet. And before my mission and after my mission, I did not date a lot. People would ask me about that. I would say, I actually do date all the time. And I'd call them 5-minute dates. I can talk to a girl, and within 5 minutes, I know if maybe there's something there or not. So in that sense, I had dated a lot. With Liza, though, it was completely different. It was this deep sense of familiarity. Mm-hmm. And it was so easy and so natural. And so we go on this hike, and we come back, and we fire up the barbecue. It's just outside the garage of this home. And I'm making some ingredients inside. And I say, it's getting really windy. How about you bring the barbecue inside? And she's okay. And this is Liza's personality. When she decides to do something, she just goes right to the task. And before I know it, she's literally pulling this large barbecue inside the house. I meant let's just pull it inside the garage to get out of the wind.
And in my defense, we didn't barbecue a lot at my house. And so I didn't really know how those things worked, right?
She was so determined, like an ant pulling on a huge crumb or something. She was just yanking on trying to pull it in the door.
And you were smitten, huh? After that.
I knew at that point any girl who can bring a barbecue into a house and isn't afraid to do that.
And it was just such a fun night. We also played basketball. Didn't we play lightning or something? And I beat you.
Did you really?
I did.
I probably let you.
I don't know. We had so much fun. So after that night, I made the mistake, and I call it a mistake now, but I called my mom and I said, Mom, I just met the man I'm going to marry. And I had only gone on one date with him, but he felt so familiar. It felt like meeting my old soulmate. And my mom is, well, she's my mom. So of course she was concerned. And she didn't actually say any of this, but it was this feeling of, are you crazy? You go up to Montana. We don't even know him. He could be the Unabomber. You have no idea who he is. And you're telling me you just met the man you're going to marry. I remember her coming up with all my family. I was the middle child of 6, so I had 3 younger sisters still at home. And all of them came up with my grandma and my mom and dad to meet this boy that they were not really sure about. And then things got actually kind of difficult for us.
So yeah, Liza's family, when I met them, they were highly skeptical of me to begin with. Not so much because of who I was, but they were in love with this other guy. So we finished out the summer, had an amazing summer.
So even though, this is kind of interesting, even though both of us felt a real strong connection and intuition that we were the one, and you felt it too, and by the end of the summer, we were actually talking marriage.
Yeah, we were talking marriage, but obviously Liza's family was trying to put the brakes on that pretty hard. They wanted her to come to her senses, come back to school, and cool it down, which is probably wasn't a bad idea, really. It was wise. But then in that time apart, we kind of had some doubts creeping in, not so much about us and how we felt, but just everything started to feel really complicated, and not between us, but between the situation. So to make a long story short, we kind of made it through the winter, long distance. And then Liza came to me one day and said, I am going to Russia. There's this opportunity to go and live there and teach children English. We had been obviously talking about marriage and trying to figure out the details of when and how it was going to all make sense. And she basically said, we can get married and go to Russia, or we don't, and you stay home, and who knows what will happen there. And so I actually bought a ring and proposed to her at that time.
Okay, so tell the engagement story, because that is so cute. I love our engagement story.
So we were living back in Utah at this time, and Liza was going to school, but I thought that it would be fun if we got engaged back in West Yellowstone where we had met. It was March, so it was early spring up in Yellowstone, but there's still tons of snow everywhere. And so I arranged for a snowmobile trip.
And I had never ridden a snowmobile in my life. He had posed this trip up to West Yellowstone as his sister had just had a baby, and we were going up to visit his sister's brand new baby.
That's right. So that was the cover for the trip. I wanted to surprise her a little bit. Obviously, we had been talking about marriage quite a bit, but wanted it to be something of a surprise. And so in West Yellowstone, I pulled up to the snowmobile place and I said, I need to go talk to somebody. And I came back out and said, okay, get ready. We're going on a snowmobile ride. And
I was really surprised. I was like, what? Wait, I thought we were going up to Sheila's.
And I was pretty nervous. And in this snowmobile rental shop, they had a bunch of boots for people. And I had this big ring and a ring box. And I knew that I couldn't have that in my pocket the whole time. And so I took the ring out, slipped the ring into my pocket, threw the ring box in one of those boots.
So you had a loose ring in your
I had a
pocket.
loose ring in my pocket. So we went up to the top of Two Top Mountain, which is really stunning. The views up there are amazing. And
you could see the whole valley.
See the whole valley. It was this crystal clear evening. We're overlooking Yellowstone Park.
So we're sitting on top of Two Top, and the trees are just caked in snow. They just look like big snow mounds. Like there's so much snow up there. And I'm freezing. It's starting to get dark. The view was gorgeous, but I'm ready to go back down. And do you remember what you said? You were like, we can't go yet.
I think I was waiting for the moon to rise. I had looked it up to see.
It was a big full moon.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this beautiful amber-colored moon just slowly rose up over the mountains. I think I jokingly said, cue the moon.
Cue the moon. And so the moon rose.
And I think she was getting suspicious by now. And so I needed to throw her off the scent trail a little bit. And I said, well, better head back. It's getting cold, getting dark. Let's head back.
I was just waiting for the moon.
Yeah. And so started up the snowmobile, started going back down the mountain. And then I stopped.
And I was confused at that time. I was like,
that would have been
really?
a great opportunity.
We were just waiting for the moon? Really?
And so I said, the keys in my pocket are kind of jabbing my legs, so I've got to shift them. So I got off the snowmobile and pulled out the ring and one knee and the whole deal. And
it was awesome.
Yeah, she said yes. So
it was so exciting. I loved it. It was such a fun, romantic experience. So go back to Russia. Now we were thinking of going to Russia.
We're going to start our marriage in Russia, of all places. I was actually kind of nervous about the whole thing. Russia at this time was undergoing a lot of change and crisis, and it wasn't the safest place. And so I'm going to have this new bride in Russia, and what does that even look like? But people talk about how wonderful their engagement sometimes is and how their first year of marriage is hard. But for us, it was the opposite. Our engagement was really difficult. It was fraught with a lot of doubt and anxiety, questions.
Mostly on your part, might I say.
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, I had a lot of self-doubt because your parents' skepticism of me was somewhat well-founded. I mean, I didn't have any plan in life.
And that is true. You had all these harebrained schemes to do odd jobs and be like not settled down.
I thought I was going to be, this entrepreneur, and I had all these great business ideas. In hindsight, they were all really stupid, but so I can imagine why your parents were a little bit nervous. But anyway, I was having some doubts about my ability to provide and to follow through with this. So our engagement was pretty difficult. In fact, there was one dramatic moment when she held out the ring and offered it back to me. and it shocked me and made me realize how I really needed to just stop messing around and be committed. I did not accept the ring.
And mine, it was truly a bluff, but I would have followed through. But it was a way to say, make a decision, commit, and move forward. And if you can't do that, then I'll go to Russia and we'll see you when I get home in 6 months. So it really was a bluff to kind of push you over the edge because you just needed that extra nudge, right?
Yeah, and so...
And thankfully, I was so grateful he did not take the ring, too, back.
So the engagement was fraught with a lot of opposition. And I remember it was actually the group that we were going to Russia with. The leader of the group gave this little speech, this talk about faith versus fear and the importance of acting upon our faith instead of acting upon our fears. And I realized all of my insecurities, I'd been acting upon my fears and the things that I was worried about and all the million things that could go wrong instead of having a faith approach. And so the day came when we got married, and I can honestly say when we made those marriage commitments to each other, it felt like there were angels present. To me, it was a victory. It was the pinnacle of months of anxiety and doubt and second guessing. It was a moment of victory. And I can't say that I feel the Spirit of God all the time, but at that moment, it felt like a huge victory, and it was being attended and celebrated by angels just because I think of the opposition I had faced at that time. And man, what a huge relief and sense of having chosen the right thing, having made the right decision. And after that, our first year of marriage was just amazing. I mean, we had so much fun, and there was very little adjustment to make with each other. It just felt so natural and so easy to be together.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned that sometimes people talk about the first year of marriage as being so difficult, and ours was blissful. It was amazing. After our first year of marriage, I actually recalled my dream that I had. I don't know when it hit me, but I all of a sudden recognized Sheldon. And I said to him one night, I said, "You were the man that I dreamt of."
The man of my dreams.
That's right. Like literally, I had a dream and it was you. And I don't know why that dream was masked from me while we were dating. Perhaps because we had to travel through that opposition-filled time, kind of walking in faith. But it was after the trial of our faith to get through that I then remembered that dream and recognized him as who I had dreamt of. And I often look back on that and I think perhaps I was given that dream so that on some type of spiritual level, I recognized you as who I needed to marry. And so I definitely see some divine guidance in there from getting the job, having all the stars align to get us both up in West Yellowstone to meet. I just love our story. I think it's wonderful. And I will say this, just because we feel like the Lord guided us to each other, it doesn't mean that our marriage has been blissfully happy for the past 20 years. We've had ups and downs. We've had to work hard to continue to love each other and to continue to make our marriage work, which is the point of committing to one another. And we've used the Lord in our journey over the 20 years many, many times to help keep our marriage strong. And something fun we did for our 20th wedding anniversary. We got married in June. And our wedding was such a beautiful day. And like Sheldon said, it was like this weight had lifted off both of us. Like we had come through this fierce opposition.
It felt like a victory lap.
Mm-hmm. We just pushed through to the end. But on our 20th wedding anniversary, it was so much fun. We took 4-wheelers up to Two Top Mountain and had a picnic at the very top where we had gotten engaged 20 years earlier and have that fun memory. So thanks, Sheldon, for sharing this love story with my listeners. I really believe it was the hand of God that guided us to each other, and there was no reason for me to go to West Yellowstone, honestly. In all the world, why would I have gone up there? And everything just fell into place. And I just believe that was a divine miracle, a divine intervention and orchestration to get us to meet each other.
And I am pretty sure that you were the one I had to meet up there.
I hope so. By now, I hope so.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty confident in saying that now.
Yeah. Oh, good. All right. Well, thanks for listening to our story. I hope that wasn't too self-indulgent, but I do love our story of how we met. So happy Valentine's Day this week, everybody. Hope you can think of someone that you love, let them know that you love them, and hopefully you can think of a time when you felt God's love and his divine orchestration in your life. I wanted to end with a poem that my husband wrote right after we met that summer. It's called My Old Friend. I went back to the town of my youth and met an old friend for the first time. How great it was to hold her. I had missed her. Thanks for spending some time with me this week. And remember to notice and celebrate the miracles everywhere, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen.